Hi, I'm Virginia.
And I'm Barbara.
Welcome to MindSET, your weekly live stream giving you the tools and knowledge to manage your mental health and well-being.
Yep. Today is the last session in our series 3.
Yay!
There will be more though, don't worry. We'll tell you about that at the end. MindSET is put together by therapists, staff at Body and Soul, and people with lived experience of mental health. And today's session is going to be about pros and cons, and the main content will be taught by our resident therapist, Darryl. Say hello to everyone, Darryl.
Hello. So,
and Virginia's going to do the live scribe, everybody. So
Barbara, excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
pros and cons are used in CBT and DBT. Pros and cons is useful for when you have to decide between two different courses of action. So doing something or not doing something. And what we're going to do around today is around what they call crisis urges. Yeah. So these are the crisis urges. Maybe you have an urge to message people and tell them what you really think of them, or maybe you have an urge not to eat, or maybe you have an urge to eat too much, or maybe you have a urge to run in the traffic. So instead of just thinking, oh, I'll take your example or I'll take your example, what we're going to do is just call it an urge or call it a crisis urge, because actually all of those things, yeah, all of them, they're all linked. They're all part of what they call an impulse disorder, you know, an urge to do something without stopping yourself. Yeah. A pros and cons is like a preparatory skill. So what I mean by a preparatory skill is that you would do a pros and cons like now. You wouldn't do one in the moment that you're distressed. Because if you were to do one in the moment that you're distressed, then it's less convincing. Because when you're stressed, all you want to do is regulate. All you want to do is find that relief. And pros and cons get you to think about the long term rather than the short term. Yeah. So everyone out there that wants to, right, what they can do is they can get their own pros and cons. You know, they can do something like this. They can get, can you see that?
Yeah.
They can do themselves a little sheet where it says the pros of doing something, the cons of doing something, and the pros of not doing it, and the cons of not doing it. Yeah. And the reason that we do this in 4 ways, yeah, is because it gives us what they call a holistic view. It gives us an all-round view. Because so some of the answers will be the same, yeah, in different boxes. Like where you see Virginia's cross, some of the answers will be going both, right? But that's okay, because we might find something new that tips the balance. So when you're doing a pros and cons, you're looking for something to tip a balance that just gives you the edge about what to do or not. It doesn't come up with huge definitive answers. It gives you a more or less. Yeah. So it says to you, on balance, I don't want to do this. Yeah. So an urge is a crisis. An urge is a crisis when the crisis is very strong and when, you know, long term might be problematic. So you do a pros and cons before the overwhelming crisis hits. Yeah, you write out your pros and cons, you carry them around with you, you put them on your phone, you rehearse them, learning them over and over again. And then when the crisis comes up, you get them out and you read them and you read them and you imagine the positive consequences of not doing it. You think of the negative consequences of giving up. You remember the past when you've gone with these kind of urges. So these are all the things that you do after, and I'll go through them again, right? So first up, right? So I want people to think about what are the benefits, because a pro is a benefit. What are the benefits of people acting on impulsive urges? Yeah, either whether they're giving up, giving in, avoiding what needs to be done. So what are the benefits of just acting on these crisis urges? Because what I want people to do is I want people to see that despite them being different crisis urges, is all the similar sort of thinking styles behind them.
Okay.
Instant gratification.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that. Yeah, instant.
Yeah. So that would go down. Yep. What else?
Avoid responsibility for making any effort to not do it. Oh, one person says relief from mental pain.
Yeah, yeah. So you'd put that down. Yeah.
Quickly soothes, somebody said.
Yeah, instant relief. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Quickly soothe. Yeah.
Yep. Somebody says, I feel like it's a biological response to what I need, for example, to rest or pause.
Okay. Yeah. Biological need. Yeah. What else?
Oh, gives me a sense of control.
Sense of control. Yeah.
One person asks if fleeting urges are the same thing. Like if you get a sudden urge to, run in front of a bus or something. Is that the same kind of urge as what we're talking about?
A fleeting urge is different. A fleeting urge is somewhat different because it comes and goes so quickly.
Okay.
So this is a momentum urge. So something that's maybe building in you.
Yeah, and tends to happen more than once.
Fleeting urges are generally more associated with thoughts, and people can let those. You're standing in a train station, you think, oh, I wonder what it'd be like to jump in front of the next one, or you're standing on the edge of a cliff and you feel that like, oh, but it tends to come and go a bit quicker. We're talking about ones that are building and you feel it, you feel your heart start to go, you feel your face get hot, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want people to you can think ahead. I want you to think about that when you act on these urges, right? When you go with it, right? What are the consequences? What happens as a result? And look, I want people to realize that consequences can also be pleasant. Yeah, this is not about. I don't want people to think that pros and cons is about the negatives and the positives because it's not. So, what are the consequences?
We'll have to clean up the mess.
Yeah.
Feel guilty, hurt
and
others.
I regret doing it. One person said it. Olivia says it hurts other people.
Yeah.
One person says it calms me down.
Okay. Yeah. People feel guilty, regret, shame. Yeah. I wonder when you go with an urge, Barbara, right? You know that instant gratification.
Yeah.
How long does that last?
That lasts about 2 seconds, and then the guilt lasts for longer.
Right. So that might be worth people putting in when they avoid something. When you stay in bed, right? How long do you think? Oh, thank God, I'm just going to stay in bed. How long does that last? And then how long does the guilt about staying in bed last? You need to think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people say, one person says, I feel release and like, phew. And then another person says, I can sometimes get stuck on that urge. The urge to rest can become like an all day thing.
Yeah. So you lose control. So you lose control.
Yeah. One person says it means I'm relying on others and not myself to feel better.
Yeah. Okay.
And then another person says, I feel ashamed and like I'm not capable.
Yeah. Okay.
Somebody else says 10% relief, 90% guilt.
Right. This is So you see, no, it's okay. So we've got a balance starting to move around. What do you reckon? One more?
One more, yeah. I mean, for me, the consequence is that I get more distressed. Like I get more thoughts about self-hatred and stuff. Yeah. One person says FOMO, fear of missing out. For you, Darryl.
I can tell you, right, that this pros and cons, right? They did these pros and cons and they used the American college system to do this, right? So they sort of blanketed mass, sort of sent emails to all US sort of college students to get them to fill stuff like this in, and like they found out like what were the main answers for what main kind of themes came up for people about the pros and cons of acting on urges. So I'll give you some of those as we go on. And one of the consequences of acting of urges, one of the highest rating ones, was around when they did one on self-harm, which was one of the consequences was not being able to wear a t-shirt in the summer.
Yeah.
And people thought that, and that was the most important one for people. For people being able to dress how they want and not feel disconnected from other people, that they were hiding something. So there's all sorts of different. So what I'm saying is I don't want people to judge their reasons for coming up with the pros and cons. It's not about that. There's no good or bad reason. It's just whatever it is. Yeah. Okay. So should we look at the benefits? What do people think the benefits would be of not acting on an impulse? So they don't do it. What do you think the benefits of not doing it would be? So not staying in bed, or not eating a lot of food, or not staying up all night studying.
I mean, for me, I definitely feel more proud of myself and more in control. Oh, some people say more energy.
Yeah.
Less regret. One person says feel mastery, and like I'm starting to build a habit.
Yeah. So feel control, right?
Yeah. One person says feel more in control, feel healthier. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Yeah.
You know, you can do these about being busy, about being not busy, about doing too much, about doing too little. Yeah, you can do it on all sorts. People do pros and cons on all sorts of stuff. I do pros and cons on holiday destinations. I do it on, a salad for lunch versus a chicken curry for lunch. I can do it on all. And lots of people. The beauty of a pros and cons is that if we keep doing them, writing them out initially, we can template them into our brain. And we just start thinking in pros and cons. And thinking in pros and cons is a very effective way of managing distress, but also making other decisions. The pros and cons of leaving a job, staying in a job, all sorts of stuff. Yeah. So it's a very useful. And in DBT, they use the pros and cons at the beginning and end of every module, because it's so powerful. It's so powerful. Even you speak to CEOs of big companies and stuff like that. And essentially, although they're not writing it down, sometimes they do, but the pros and cons are going through their heads all the time. Insurance companies do it. You can think of it as pros and cons, or you can think of it as risks and rewards. There's all sorts of methods of doing this, and it's been psychologically well validated.
Yeah, but the difference with this one is that, like most people I know in business situations, they just do pros and cons. They don't do four. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the 4 one gives a clearer direction of travel, really.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's have a look at the last box now, and this is the consequences of not doing something. The consequences of not acting on that urge. You don't do the urge. What are the consequences, do you think?
More stress, more distress. For me, more
short-term distress.
Yeah, short-term. Yeah. One person says stress, falling behind. Another person says takes more effort not to act on it.
Yeah.
Another person says I might regret going against my instinct. Olivia says no temporary relief. Another person says have to find another way to calm myself down. Yeah, that's my one too. Another person says slower. I feel anxious for longer rather than just have a peak and then come down.
Right. Okay.
Panic of not knowing how to deal with the stress. Situation, like a loss of control.
Yeah.
Another person says feeling like there's a buildup, or there's going to be like an explosion. Another person says feeling like I may still act on my urge at some point, like it's not necessarily going to go away.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah. So this also kind of makes the so you've got to. So one of the things was that people didn't know what to do instead. And that's where the skills come in, really, or the distress tolerance skills, because these are the times when you can use distress tolerance skills.
Yeah, I've seen that's made a big difference. You just go stick your head in ice water or something, and then.
Yeah.
Well, one person says urge to. Sometimes I feel less satisfied by not blowing up.
Yeah. Okay, I get that. Yeah. Feel less satisfied.
Less satisfied by not blowing up. I'm bringing it up because
because what happens is that when you go with the urges, it releases all those built up chemicals and hormones and stuff like that. So I totally get that. So remember, we don't want to judge it. What we want to do is that. So what I want people to do is have a quick read through their thing and say, well, on balance. Yeah. So one thing I tell you that was clear from the research from this, right, was that every time you go with one of these crisis urges, and some people call it the death zone, if you like. But when you go with one of these urges, each time it makes you slightly less able to cope in the future. Tiny, but it makes you slightly less able to cope. And that's one of the consequences of acting on urges. Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that for myself.
Yeah.
It sucks, but yep.
Yes. Okay. I'll answer any questions, but before we do that, I'll just go over some of the tenets of using sort of what they call distress tolerance skills. Yeah.
Yep.
So distress tolerance skills are only really effective in highly stressful situations, in situations that are short term, so that it won't last a long time. So I don't know, say you're stuck in if you're stuck on an aeroplane on a tarmac and it's boiling hot for 12 hours, then you could use a skill there. But the stress can't be ongoing. If it keeps repeating itself, then you've got a problem to solve. Yeah. So you're in a crisis when the pressure feels intense, when you have all of these body sensations, when you feel hot, when you're running up and down and things like that. And what lots of people do is they try to white knuckle times like that. They try to just hold on and try and get through it. And what the research says about this is that it's almost impossible to do that. And it just makes people build up and act later. So you would want to use these skills, or you'd want to use crisis survival skills instead of white knuckling. White knuckling rarely is that effective. So you use these skills when you have an intense pain that can't be helped quickly. So like maybe you can't sort out your feelings or something like that. Acting will make things worse. You do it when you feel overwhelmed and you want to stay kind of in control. When there's no problem to solve. So that's when you would use them. What you don't use these kinds of skills for is you don't use them for everyday problems. Yeah. So if I had noisy neighbors and they were making a lot of noise every night that I went to bed, I wouldn't use distress tolerance skills to solve that. I would want to use a different set of skills. Yeah. It might be emotion regulation or relationship skills. I couldn't, I don't want to solve. I couldn't use distress tolerance skills to solve the problem. I don't have a job. Yeah. So you're not solving all of your life. Yeah. And the other thing is that you can't live your life in distress tolerance skills. Yeah. You can't make a life worth living just using distress tolerance skills, because distress tolerance skills don't solve problems. What they do is they just delay making things worse. And that's a really important distinction that I would want people to make.
So one person says, why does it feel good to punish myself?
So first of all, it's not usually a feeling of good. It's an absence of bad, if you like. What the people that use crisis urges and stuff, what they're trying to do is about the relief, and relief often masks itself as happiness, but it doesn't make it. So it takes away the pain rather than makes pleasure.
Oh, rather than brings happiness.
Relief is relief driven, and this was worked out in. This again was very well researched, and they saw that the two methods of the two purposes of acting on crisis urges was either relief from pain or punishment, that people somehow felt that they deserved this kind of treatment. It's relief, it's not happiness.
Yeah.
It's relieving.
Okay. And then one person says that when I'm distressed, I'm judging myself, so I start to feel worse. So I'm concerned that if I use the pros and cons, is that going to add to the judgment if I'm thinking about the consequences of my actions?
You don't do the pros and cons
when you're distressed.
When you're distressed, you do the pros and cons when you're in a wise mind state. And sometimes what the pros and cons does is the pros and cons is just pointing you towards the distress tolerance skills. Because well, I don't want to actually go with this. Right. So then you might use some of the other skills we've talked about, like the stop, the tip, the self-soothe, the improve, the accept, some of the other skills we talked about in distress tolerance. So it's sometimes just a gateway. It prepares you, and you go, right, well, what am I going to do? And then you jump into.
Yeah. Olivia says, what if part of your self-destructive behavior is not to use distress tolerance, even though you know you should?
Well, you see, the should in that is a judgment. So the should is the judgment. You don't have to. People can act on crisis urges all they want, and you can do them. I'm not saying to anyone to not act on them. You could, but what you've got to ask yourself is how has acting on them helped you in your life?
Yeah, but is that like willfulness?
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily willfulness is trying to fix and control stuff, but this is more about the choice, isn't it? What we know is that people that act on urges, I mean, think about it. You're here, right? If you're here, then you're struggling, and if you're struggling, the chances are you've either acted on urges in the past or you're acting on them now. So so there's no should about it. It's up to you. It's just that sometimes the choice that you make is between pain and suffering, worse and worse. Sometimes you're looking at the least worst option. So there's if you compel yourself, if you say you should use skills, then you're in trouble, because you're adding judgments on top of your distress. And if you add judgments on top of your distress, it will make you worse.
Yeah. Well, the thing that freaks me out is the thing you said about the brain, that the more we give into urges, the less we can actually overcome those urges. So it's kind of that's kind of big.
And some people, what will happen? Some people will have stopped acting on urges, and when they go back to them, they start to see how distressed they can feel again. Right.
So everyone, what you could practice this week, what you could choose to practice, right? Do your pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
We will post them on the Instagram page. And as Darryl says, like it takes time to write them out and stuff, but once you've written them out, definitely have them with you, like stick them on your phone, or I had mine on a little piece of paper or whatever, and just a big piece of paper. Because then you can get used to using them when the moment strikes. Okay.
Yes.
Right.
So we've got 2 Instagram accounts. So it's at Share the Mindset and at Body and Soul Charity. And if you have any burning questions, you can email us at mindset@bodyandsoulcharity.org.
And we will be back on Wednesday, 5th of May, same time, same
5th
channel.
of May.
5th of May. Yes.
5th of May.
Yeah,
5/5.
5/5. Yeah, 5th of May, same time.
Again, we want to remind you that MindSET is not designed for crisis support. So if you cannot keep yourself safe, or you just can't keep yourself safe, please go to the nearest A&E department or call Samaritans at 116-123.
Thank you so much for watching and being with us. We will see you
very soon,
5th of May. In the meantime,
keep working on your mindset. Bye.